Hi guys, Sarah here from Highland Haven Australian Shepherds and Highland Haven Dog Training, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 8 of Dog for Thought. Joining me is my co-host, daughter, and dog trainer extraordinaire, Sophie.
Hi, everyone.
So, what's up, Sophie? Give us an update in Dogland.
Well, the puppies are 5 weeks, and they are toddling around. They're learning how to use the potty room. They're starting to go outside now that it's getting warmer out. And most of them are sold except for one. So a lot has changed since the last time we've talked to you guys.
Well, that's true. That's true. So I think 5 weeks is kind of the pinnacle of cuteness. They are, like you say, big enough to toddle around and have some fun. They're super people focused at this age, which I love. Of course, anybody loves. You know, you go in the room and they just, race over to you like they're so happy to see you and they missed you so much, which is super cute. And you mentioned they're finally going outside. The weather's been really cold here. I did have somebody comment on my Instagram that their puppies have been going out through this whole winter. Whatever.
Okay, if you want to endanger the life of infants, go ahead. You can go ahead and do that.
Well, I think the puppies are fine. They would have been fine going out in the cold last week. I don't take them out in the cold because I don't want to sit out in the cold. Like, it's kind of about me. I don't want to be out in the cold, sitting there freezing my buns off.
How long is it going to take to, first of all, get them out there without them peeing and pooping all the way out there? And then secondly, they're just going to be complaining the whole time.
Yeah. No,
so,
it's miserable. Yeah. So finally, I think our outside area is, it's a very small area right now that we just set up. Again, reminder, we've only been in this house for less than 6 months. So this is the first outdoor area I've set up for the puppies. But it's not a bad little area. It's set up easily. And, with puppies, they grow so fast. So right now they're sort of overwhelmed by this little space, by the air and the temperature and the surfaces and all of that stuff. So they complain the whole time when they're out there right now. But within a few days, that's the only place they're going to want to be. They'll just complain every time I bring them inside.
Yeah, and then in between 6.5 and 8 weeks, they'll have the whole run of the yard where they can just run around and stuff. So I don't know. I think everything comes in stages, and you can do whatever you want as a breeder.
For sure.
Do what you think is the best thing to do. I hate when people, I don't know, whatever.
I think she was kind of joking around, but whatever. I mean,
husky puppies, yeah, they would be outside.
I don't want to sit out in the gray, cold, freezing cold weather.
With ice, the whole backyard's like a sheet of ice right now.
Yeah.
The sun doesn't even hit the backyard, so it's just miserable and cold the entire time.
That part of the yard is very shady. So, like you say, there's like a sheet of glacial ice out there that is going to take another several days of warm weather to even melt. Once that happens, then I'll start extending their space and they'll be out on the grass. Right now, they're sort of like on a little pea gravel area with a little bit of a patio area. And that's perfect for them for right now. We'll get the climb on equipment set up today.
I already set it up.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
So I thought you were going to bring them out before, so I just set it up for you when I was with the training dogs.
And they'll get sick of that in a couple of days. It'll be overwhelming initially, and then they'll get sick of that. So if you don't like what stage your tiny puppy is in, blink, because they'll be in a new stage. Like, it never lasts.
No. I always feel like it's when they're first born until their eyes open. It feels like forever. Then once their eyes open, then it just like boop, 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 boop. Okay, they're going home.
Yeah, that's probably true. I don't love the infant stage. I think it's boring.
I don't think it's boring. I think it's stressful.
And stressful, for sure. Yeah, because they're much more fragile.
Well, I'm like, are they gaining weight? What if something happens to the mama? Is she okay? And then there was a bit drama during this stage this time with Evie. So, it was a little stressful. Luckily, we had Gianni here. So.
Yeah, it's always stressful. And then suddenly they get into this stage and like
super
you say,
easy.
It's fast. It's because we weigh them every week. The 1 week is a milestone. They're Sunday puppies, so every Sunday we weigh them. It's like every Sunday that passes, you're like, oh, geez. Like yesterday, I was like, geez, these puppies are going to be going home in 3 weeks.
Yep. Crazy.
And one puppy is staying with us.
Yep.
For some puppy training.
Yep.
Their owner is she has a daughter that's getting married, so she's going to be super busy in the month of April, and so she didn't think she'd be able to spend the kind of time that she wanted to with the puppy in that very critical period. In addition to that, she's really wanted the puppy fully crate trained, on the way to being potty trained, leash trained, working on puppy mouthing and all that stuff. So I think she combined those two desires and decided to leave her here for about a month. This is Smokey.
Yeah,
the little
I'm
red
really
tri.
excited to have her. I think she's going to be fun to work with, and she's super cute right now.
Oh,
so.
she's so cute and she's so
Gosh.
sweet. I
She
love
is.
her. Yeah,
She's a
so
cutie
she's
pie.
going to be fun. So as soon as the puppies go home, that Sunday will be the last puppies will go home. She will transition upstairs into a crate, when we're not watching her, and be part of the pack for 4 to 5 weeks.
Yep.
And the mom will come visit when she can. She's 3 to 4 hours away, so
Yeah.
it's not like she'll be able to come too often, but she's going to come and we'll work a little bit on training, and she can bond a little bit. And then at the end of that period, she's going to go home like a very well-trained, well-mannered little puppy. So that's a win-win for everyone involved.
Yep.
And our dogs are so good, so well-versed in puppy rearing. The ones I worry about, Deacon definitely needs to be supervised with the puppies. But the other girls are really quite good. Maybe Twiggy will need to be supervised a bit.
Well, she's just super high
Strung.
strung. Yeah. So, yeah, anyways.
But she might come upstairs and love playing with puppies. She's kind
She's
of a
so
wild
funny,
card.
man.
Yeah.
So like sometimes she's like super playful. Like yesterday with Riley, one of our boarding dogs. She played so nicely with Riley, and they're playing so nice. And then this morning they got in a little tiff over like a bone, which there's like 1,000 different Nyla bones that they like. It's like not a big deal. And I'm like,
Well,
are you
I
guys
think
serious?
your point this morning when I was talking about how good they were last night is that, it depends on the time of day.
It does, and Twiggy's a little bit in the morning, and then Riley's brother was annoying her, and I helped her correct him. And once she gets a little bit of power, she overuses the power that I helped her.
Twiggy.
Twiggy with this morning, and then she overcorrected Riley, and then Riley was like, "What the heck?" And that was that. Which it wasn't really a big deal at all. I just yelled at them, and they were like, "Oh, sorry." And they had a 5-minute timeout, and that was that, and they were fine. It's just like it's to me I know it's not unpredictable, but it feels kind of unpredictable sometimes with her, because I'm just like, you were just playing so nicely with her. I don't understand.
She's a wild card.
Yeah.
You never really can sit too comfortably with Twiggy around.
No.
She got too much going on between the ears.
Yeah, she's thinking too much all the time. That's why she's a little Malinois in the house.
Yeah. She's our little Australian Malinois.
Yeah.
So the puppies are doing good. To get back to them, they'll be going home in 3 weeks. Oh, and we've been doing litter training. They finally figured out the litter training, which is great. So if you follow us on social media, you'll know that we set up the pen, we call it the toddler pen. So by the time they're 3 weeks old, they're in the bigger pen, and that has a bathroom in it, essentially a toilet area. And it usually takes 1 to 2 weeks for them to really learn, to eliminate only in the one spot, which is in the toilet room, which there's paper down for that, and not to eliminate in their living space and eating space. This litter took almost exactly 2 weeks. This morning I woke up to nary a single poop in the living room, in the living space, which was great. Not that will always be that way. They'll still occasionally poop once or twice overnight. I mean, it's a 12-hour night.
Yeah, it's a long night for them, but they handle it really well.
I mean, when you think about 7 puppies being alone for 12 hours and not pooping in their living space, that's
Pretty impressive.
Incredible. It is. And it's just a matter of their instincts and setting up their space in a way that enhances their instinct to not poop where they sleep, essentially.
Yep.
Don't shit where you eat.
We've made mistakes with that before, which I was thinking about the other podcast we talked about of when we've made mistakes with raising puppies, and then we've like adjusted, and one of them was we put the potty room directly when we came down the stairs, so when they would come to greet us, they would run in the potty room. And so then we learned that once it needs to be the farthest away, and then we set up the the puppy toddling box weird, and there was like too many gaps, so we had to make it like less angular and more like rigid, so there's like a living space, like more rigid So the puppies understood that this is living space. This isn't the pooping room. And then we had to like readjust. So like with each litter of puppies, I feel like we've gotten really good at setting up the toddler room. So it's easier for them to like transition from not pooping in the living space to pooping in the pooping space.
Yeah, for sure. And I've learned over the years how to manipulate them with the living space. So what I do is I put a lot of objects. I don't know if you've noticed that. I put a lot of objects in the living space. There's raised beds. There's beds on the floor. There's a big puppy mobile in there, food bowl, water bowl, that kind of thing. And when they are pooping in the wrong spot in the toddler pen, I will move one of those objects into that spot. So I'll move a bed into that spot, or I'll move the mobile into that spot, so that they are resistant. They go over there and go, oh, well, that's a bed. I don't poop there.
Yeah.
And so I find if I keep rotating the objects in the room on top of the spot that they previously used inappropriately to poop or pee, that night they'll be like, okay, I guess we don't pee there. Okay, I guess we don't. And it's like a process of elimination for them, no pun intended. And they eventually start to sort of navigate over to the separate potty room eventually. And then once, like all dogs and people too, once they're habituated to pooping in a space, one particular area, they're going to continue to do that if you allow them access to that, which is why everybody's experienced the dog or the puppy, the young puppy who poops in the dining room under the table. And then for like the life of that dog, they occasionally, if they mess in the house, it's going to be under the dining room table or whatever they decided, right? It's the same thing. It's just habituation.
Yep.
So it was great to see. I'm trying to put together a YouTube video of how to do this process from start to finish for other breeders or anyone who's interested. And so it was cool today because I've been videoing every morning when I go in for 2 weeks, and I reviewed the videos yesterday, and it's like, oh wow, what's really gross initially, and then each day the poops get less and less and less, and then today no poops at all. So it's cool.
Yeah,
it's always a miracle. So like I raise kids. When people say you and Jacob are such nice kids, I take very little
credit.
Thank you. Credit for that. I just say I didn't screw you up. You sort of came out nice people, and I just didn't screw it up. It's the same with the puppies. I didn't teach them to poop in the poop room. They were pre-programmed. I just didn't screw it up. So,
well, this can kind of go into our topic of the day.
Sure. So today's topic is embracing struggle, failure, and mistakes in dog training and in life.
Yeah.
So we talk about this a lot. And this topic came to me when I was sitting there watching the puppies struggle. I don't know. They were wrestling, or maybe they were climbing over each other.
I thought you said
to nurse.
it was like the nursing, and they were like trying to wrestle, and then one would get knocked off a nipple, and they would like try to get back on another.
So I guess it was that they were trying to nurse, and they were, struggling and competing over the best spots on the milk bar. And I thought to myself, when I first started breeding, I would be much more apt to step in and move a puppy around and make sure that they get the proper access, or easier access, for instance. And that I felt much more stress watching that. And literally everybody who sees that, who's not an experienced breeder, feels stress and wants to step in and help that puppy. And I've just been thinking about over the years how I've done that less and less. And now I'm at the point where I look at that and I won't interfere almost at all, unless it's a puppy who's underweight, who's not gaining weight, right? And who's getting pushed off the milk bar and physically can't compete. Then I will step in. But that's really, really rare for us.
And even if you do step in, for the most part, it's like having its own time with the mama. I feel like that's what we do with like puppies that are extremely underweight. It's like they have their own milk bar time with mama and
Right.
everyone
so we
else
just
is
give
away.
them private time.
Yeah.
But again, that's really rare. We've been
Super
very,
rare.
very lucky.
Yeah, we haven't had like a little puppy in a while. And I think this litter, the one that I was like trying to make sure was the 2 small females. But then I forget, like, they're females. They're smaller than the males. It is what it is.
They're gaining weight, proportionately to the bigger dogs.
Yeah.
They're just slighter. They're
They're
smaller.
smaller and they just look so much smaller. And then you look at like Smokey, who's a big female, and you're like, oh, she's huge. So if she's on like a main milk part, like I'll just like move her to the other side and then put them on this side. But then I don't intervene after that. They have to fend for themselves,
Right.
which is really important.
It's not just a matter of the puppies sort of working their muscles, right? Because they do have to, that's how they exercise, right? They're pushing up from the floor to find a nipple to nurse on. It's not just that. It's actually, science has shown that it's actually wires the brain.
Yeah. Well, it's building resilience.
Right. Struggle actually wires the brain to be resilient. And if you don't allow puppies to struggle, they're going to be less resilient. I find this topic to be particularly interesting in where we are right now in the world and how
In dog culture right now.
dog culture and also kid culture.
It's true.
How kids are not allowed to struggle anymore. No one wants them to struggle. Everyone wants to, level the playing field for everyone, and everyone gets a trophy and all of that stuff. And how struggle is seen as a negative, right? Kids don't ride the bus for the most part anymore. Their parents drive them to school because they don't like it, because it's icky. All of that sort of removing these roadblocks and barriers in let's focus on dogs, in a dog's life, prevents them from wiring their brain in a way that helps them be resilient throughout their lives.
And we get a lot of those clients later in life of these really anxious, trying to think, separation anxiety dogs.
Sure.
It all comes from, like, in my opinion, just doing too much. And this is when me and you talk about this all the time on our training walks, which is like particularly, and we've talked about this during the podcast, particularly the clients that we get are clients that want to do the most for their dogs and love their dogs and want them to just be extremely happy, and then we'll do everything for the dogs. And for those clients, we always tell them to do less, because them doing everything for their dog isn't teaching their dog resilience, isn't teaching their dog that, you know what, I'm going to have to go to work, and you're going to be okay that you're home alone for 5 hours in a crate where you're safe, nothing bad's going to happen, and I'll be back, and that's okay. You need to be able to build their confidence, being able to be alone, having to do a task that you need to do. So then when you come home, they were able to accomplish this on their own without any consequences, that you were just not home, And instead, I think a lot, especially like the media and social media, has been kind of shoving like daycare and dog walkers and all those things. And I think there is a place for those things in society, but not to the extreme of like, my dog needs to go to daycare every single day when I'm at work. Most dogs sleep most of the day, and they need to be able to have that time to sleep so then that they can make good decisions when they need to, when they're walking, or when you're home and all that stuff. If they don't have enough sleep, then they tend to make bad decisions. And then that's when the training kind of goes awry, because they don't have enough sleep and
Right.
they're
The behavior goes
overstimulated.
awry. Sure. So all of that's connected. So it starts from the beginning of having a puppy who's been raised by a good breeder, we hope, right? In a situation where they're allowed to struggle. My puppies struggle, but make no mistake, they're very, very well cared for puppies.
Yep.
When we're talking about struggle throughout this particular episode, we're talking about reasonable everyday struggle. We're not talking about harming a puppy or putting them in harm's way, or potentially having dangerous or negative consequences. We're talking about normal struggle, which can tug on our heartstrings.
Yep.
So when a puppy's trying to figure out how to step up, on a little step, right? Or coming up, we have these little soft steps that come up to the couch so they can lay with me. And they fall back all the time and roll all the way back and fall down. And then they try again. And that falling down part, we have to let them do that. I set up the room so that the floor is cushioned so that they don't hurt themselves. So that's how I protect them from harm, but I don't protect them from falling. You know, what we learned very quickly when we first started breeding is puppies have very little self-preservation instincts when they're really young, and they'll just literally jump off something that's way too high to jump off. And you have to be very, very careful.
Yep.
And we always remind people when they come visit, we want everybody on the floor, either sitting in a chair or sitting on the floor when they're holding puppies, because they'll literally jump out of your arms.
Yeah.
If they get spooked and they have they have no concept of height and how they can get hurt. So we set up the environment so that we can allow them to fall off of things, and we know they won't get hurt.
Yep. Or example, so there's parts in the room that they can get stuck in, right? So like the fencing, there's like maybe a little gap, like, I don't know, 5 inches, and they can squeeze in and it gets narrower and narrower, and then it hits the wall. And a lot of the times the water is on the other side of the gate. So I think they go in there to try to drink water, thinking that that's the fastest way to access to water, instead of going inside the toddler room to get to the water. And a lot of the times they get kind of wedged in there and stuck and start freaking out. And for me, I'm not going to go over there and pull them out, because they don't learn anything from that. There are going to be situations where like the owner's not home and they're going to be, I don't know, something's going to happen, or you're not there in that situation, and they're going to have to figure out how to get out of a
Not
specific
to mention,
situation.
if you take them out of there, they will immediately go right back in.
Yeah, they don't learn anything from that.
That's the frustrating part about little tiny puppies is you push them away from something and they immediately turn right around and go right back to it. So you sort of have to let them
Figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah, they would jam, like 2 or 3 puppies would jam
would
themselves.
jam in there. And then I would be like, well, you guys got yourself in there. You can definitely get yourself out. And so like I would help them by coasting them and be like, come here, you can do this. And they would, back up, and then I would kind of like massage their butt, like, yeah, come here, and tap the ground. And then they would figure out how to either back all the way up or to turn around and come out. And then now every time they go into that corner, they just flip around and come out. So it's really important for them to have those struggles, so then it gets their brain moving to be able to solve problems and situations. And in that situation, nobody was in harm's way. I was there to monitor the whole encounter, and they were able to learn without any failure.
Well, they were able to learn through failure.
But like not any consequences, I guess.
Negative consequences,
yeah.
For sure. There's nothing sharp in there.
They didn't
There's
get their
nothing
legs
dangerous.
stuck.
Yeah.
It was simply like, I knew that if something did happen, I was there to help them. But for the most part, I knew they were going to be fine and they were going to figure it out.
It's interesting to go to talk about a different species for a minute. Horses. Have you ever heard of hobbling? Do you know what hobbling a horse is? Okay, so hobbling is attaching a horse's 2 front legs together with like a band. Okay, and they can walk a little bit, but they can't walk fast, and they can't walk far. So I believe hobbling first came into practice when people would be out on the range with their horses hundreds of years ago, and there was no trees to tie them to, but they wanted to go to sleep. And so they would hobble them so that they could maybe walk a little distance, but couldn't really wander off, right? I believe that's where hobbling came from. At least that's how I always understood it. On TikTok, what I have learned is they use hobbling, and I don't know how long this has been in practice, but what they do is many people, horse trainers, will hobble their horses because what it teaches them is to not freak out when they're stuck. And a horse will completely injure themselves if they get, say, stuck in barbed wire or something, right? They'll literally rip their legs apart or break a leg by trying to panic and pull themselves out of that. So what many trainers do is they hobble their horses to teach them to be calm even when you're restrained. And it's this sort of the same thing we're talking about, right? So hobbling a horse now prevents them from doing something crazy later on and injuring themselves. Allowing a puppy to go into a small space that we know is safe and allowing them to figure out how to get out of there helps them in the future when things like that happen, right? And they don't flip out.
What I find, and correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know too much about horses, but I feel like it's super interesting the way we treat horses and the way we treat dogs, because horses naturally, they're spooky and they are prey animals, where dogs are more on the predator side. And I feel like it's much more aversive training when it comes to horses, much more intense training when it comes to horses rather than with dogs, which I find super interesting because you would
Well,
think.
there's plenty of aversive training in dogs, but you're talking about the climate right now.
Yeah.
Of anti-correction,
Mm-hmm.
anti-discipline, positive only nonsense. Yeah.
And I think if it's so tricky because I think that there's a place for both in certain circumstances, depending on the horse, depending on the dog. But it's interesting because if you look at any horse trainer, they're very much so like there's clear punishment, there's clear expectations and stuff. And with dogs, with positive only, it's so much like
you're a terrible person if you employ discipline on your dog.
And in reality, it's a predator. And if anything, I feel like that needs to kind of be tamed and maintained rather than prey. But because horses are big and they could have the potential of running a person over because they're spooked, there needs to be
more socially acceptable to use more aversive techniques. So, I mean, just full disclosure, we're not talking about cruelty.
No,
there's no place in cruelty and in working with animals or people for that matter. Let's just put that on the table. We're not talking about being cruel, but the science, the evidence-based research, not nonsense baloney research that people point to constantly that is completely silly, will show that in order for a mammal's brain to properly wire, they have to have like aversive punishment is part of it, right? If it's if it's a wolf puppy walking up to a porcupine and getting swatted and quills in their snout, like nature is super aversive, right? So they have developed, we've all evolved from the beginning of time with nature being super aversive to us. And so you have to imagine that it makes sense that our brains need that in order to wire correctly, right? In order to develop resilience. And this movement that kids can't have any struggle, dogs can't have any kind of discipline, they can only have positive only, and you're not a good trainer unless you only use positive reinforcement. It can't be any kind of punishment involved. It's just on its face, it makes no sense because in reality, it makes no sense.
Well, life, it's not gonna be positive only for your dog. I'm sorry. There are gonna be situations where your dog's gonna need to struggle. Example A, Exhibit A, the vet.
Right.
Your dog's gonna have to be restrained during the vet if they can't control themselves.
Exhibit B, grooming.
Yep.
Which is even more often.
Yep.
Right. And you put them in that situation and now they've had a really, really horrible experience because they have no understanding of being restrained and being calm in a situation like that. So in the end, what I know you and I find so frustrating is that you're more cruel to your dog by not setting clear boundaries and punishing when necessary in a fair and clear, reasonable way.
Yep.
You're actually doing your dog a disservice and your kid a disservice because the world is not going to get any nicer. The world is the world. It's always going to be harsh in circumstances, and you have the ability to set up your environment so that the aversives are not life-threatening.
Yep.
Right.
And so, like, let's use grooming, and you have a dog that has to be groomed, right? And you don't do any crate training with that dog, and you don't force that dog to do anything that they don't want to do. Now you're giving them to a groomer, and you're walking away. Now that groomer has to restrain that dog to bathe the dog, and the dog's flipping out, dropping its anal glands. So now not only does the dog need to be washed once, but washed twice because he dropped his anal glands. So now they have to rewash him again. It's traumatic. Then they have to put him in a crate. He's never been in a crate before. So now he's flipping out in the crate, drop his anal glands again. Now the groomer has to wash that dog again, and they have to go back in the crate. And then after that, they have to go on the table, get fully, completely dried before clipping them at all. They're having this very terrible experience where, it's not pleasant. No dog wants a bath. There's very rare dogs that I've met that are like, love getting baths. But it's to be able to tolerate something that you do not love. So instead of the bath being 4 hours of this like terrible, anxious, disasterful dropping anal glands and getting all messy and not having, first of all, a good experience for the dog, and then not having a successful grooming. So now your dog looks funny. You could just handle your dog and be like, I'm sorry, I have to brush you. These are what I have to do. And you're going to be okay. And let me do this and add treats with it, right? So I'm going to brush you a couple times, give you treats, and then you can go play. And then it becomes this routine. So then when they go to get groomed, it's an hour and a half grooming, fast and easy, and then they're out and ready to go.
So which is more cruel?
Yeah, it's like, yes, you have the opportunity to do, to not do anything with your dog and to not crate train them and whatever and think that this is the right thing to do. But in reality, you're handicapping them for when they have to do life things.
Bottom line, it's selfish, because I think a lot of times the reason people don't do things like crate training or the hard stuff with their dogs is because it makes them feel uncomfy, right? And it's about their feelings. I don't enjoy doing this. Guess what? I don't enjoy crating my dogs either. Like, it doesn't get me off. I don't enjoy it, but I know it's necessary and it's not cruel and that it's going to set them up for success in life. So you really have to get out of it. Whether you're parenting children or raising animals, you have to get out of your own way and stop putting your silly baggage on this animal that you're responsible to raise in a way that they can be successful. When you talk about dogs who come from crazy circumstances, bad circumstances, whether they've been truly, and I don't mean the made up ones that if you get a rescue dog and the dog shies away from you, immediately people are like, he must have been abused. I mean, actual documented cases of dogs who have been in neglectful or abused circumstances. Many times, those dogs come out of those circumstances perfectly fine.
And set up for resilience.
Because they've had to be so resilient.
Yep.
And if you don't, again, like fall into it and start going, oh, like Vivi. Vivi was almost starved to death.
Yep.
In a previous home. Literally, I have the photographic evidence. She was almost starved to death.
Yep.
That dog is the most resilient dog in the house.
Yep. I don't ever worry about anything happening to
She's
Vivian.
not food possessive, which, as a human, you would think you might be. She's not shy of people. The only thing that I think that her previous life did do for her that we find annoying is she's super independent. When she's off leash, she's the one that doesn't come right away when called. She doesn't run off.
No.
But she's like, yeah, I'll come when I feel like it. And we always laugh like, she has developed survival techniques, and I respect that in her. I mean, I just know that that's what she had to do. She's also the only dog that we had that was super, super protective of her puppies.
Yeah, like extremely.
And
you were the only one that could interact with her.
I could interact with her and her puppies, no problem. But Vivi and I have a very special relationship. She's my dog, period. She loves everyone, but she will do absolutely anything for me. Mm-hmm. But she would try to bite everyone in this house.
Yep.
Nip. You have to remember you're talking about mamas of good mama dogs. They'll come over and give you a nip. She's not flying out of the thing like a vicious animal, but definitely doesn't want you near her puppies. And, I always think that, God knows what she had to do, because we know she was bred by that person who then subsequently starved her.
Yep.
After they got their little litter of puppies, they stopped feeding her and just left her out in the barn for God knows how long.
And she also has this weird scar on her neck. So I don't know if she was chained in the barn or whatever.
She might have been chained. Yeah, she has
like an embedded collar in her neck. Mm-hmm. So who knows what she goes through. That's just what we predict happened to her neck. And I hope that
I didn't notice the scar for years. You pointed it out to me one time when she had lost all her coat when she was postpartum, and they lose their coats almost down to the skin. Mm-hmm. And you could actually see an impression of a buckle
lift
collar.
It, and you could literally see where like the buckles or like a chain or something. Yeah. Like you can see the little notches in her neck.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yet she's not neck shy.
Nope, she's
not collar shy.
Nope. You can. So handful of our dogs do not like to get picked up, but you can pick up Vivian. She doesn't really love it, but like I'll pick her up and I'll like hold her upside down, and she's totally tolerant of it, which is crazy. The only thing I think that the only two qualities that I think that have rubbed off on her because of those qualities is the independence, like you said, and then she eats a lot of poop, and I think she eats a lot of poop because that's the only thing she had access to.
Yeah, maybe.
So
What's Tula's excuse?
Tula doesn't have an excuse. Tula just follows Vivian and is just like, yeah, pack leader eats poop. I'm gonna eat poop. Gross.
Every day we have a meeting of Poop Eaters Anonymous in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Those two can't be outside without being supervised because they are poop eater extraordinaires.
Lord
So
have mercy.
anyway, to get back to Vivi. So her experience, and I would never wish that experience on any dog, and it breaks my heart thinking what she went through.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's an example of how dogs are incredibly resilient creatures, as are people, really. I mean, people come through horrible
Crazy
circumstances.
things, and you're like, I don't know.
The problem with people as opposed to animals is that people have higher level thinking, right? So that they can think back on those circumstances and draw sort of inferences that make life miserable for people who've had trauma in the past. So it's not really a comparable thing in that way, for sure. But, you know, people are incredibly resilient as well.
Yep. I mean, I think the most thing with dogs and them going through some sort of trauma like that and then kind of coming back to it and essentially what Vivian did was fall into this like beautiful life, is that the dogs live in the present. And I think that's why I'm so fascinated by them, is like they could go through this crazy trauma and it doesn't matter. They don't really think about the past, future, or present. They're in the present. They're living their life right now, you know, and they don't really have any animosity. Is that the word? About
Sure.
like the past and things that they have gone through. Like that's, for the most part, that's what I've seen with all the different dogs I've interacted with who've had really bad upbringings, who haven't. The trauma and the resilience that they've built, I feel like, are the most balanced dogs that I've met, which is crazy.
Yeah. It is.
Not the dogs that have been raised since they were 8 weeks old and have anxiety disorders and are medicated and all this stuff.
I mean, people look at Journey and they ask if she's been abused because she is not interested in people she does not know. She doesn't know you well. She will not let you come near her. Of course she hasn't been abused. Of course she hasn't. I just roll my eyes. You know, people's, their inferences when it comes to dogs and their behavior always crack me up.
Yeah.
Because they're almost 100% wrong. So that's interesting. When if you don't, I have to say there is a caveat to that. You have to be careful not to lean into your overthinking of what's happened to this dog. For Vivi, if we babied her, you know, and you can sort of exacerbate some of those tendencies.
Qualities, yeah.
That she maybe is a little bit nervous about this, that, or the other thing. You're like making this shit up in your head, and then you're treating her in such a way that like she's a China doll or something.
I feel like that happens with a lot of dogs that have like amputee, like don't have like a front leg or a back leg, and then they treat this dog is so weak. He can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And then I think it was really important when we had Cole and he only had one back leg, that when we were looking for an owner for him, that we were like, you need to treat him like any old dog. Like he is capable of doing everything that a normal dog can do. So that's how you need to treat him. Because if you start babying him around his back leg and he can't do this, he can't do that, then behavioral issues are going to start popping up here and there.
Right. Then he's going to act the way you have decided he should act, you know, being handicapped. Interestingly, maybe counterintuitively, I don't think I would have done well keeping him. The whole one back leg thing was very hard for me to watch, to see him struggle. Even though I know he needed to do it, it wasn't pleasant for me. He found a home where they were like totally into that. And there's certain owners that really love that kind of thing and that do great with these dogs. And he's turned out to be a great dog. Yeah. He came back for training. He's a sweetheart.
Yep.
And he certainly didn't have any problems playing fetch. He's not as
you don't
quite as
even-
fast as the other dog, but he was pretty fast.
Okay, first of all, if you a full speed, you didn't even know he only had one back leg. He runs so fast. And then it's not unless you like squint your eyes, you see his little chicken leg wobbling out the side. And he never even needed to get it amputated because they're like, oh, he uses it as like a knee. So like he uses it to like climb on things.
And that's so
So
wonderful.
they
Because
figure it
why
out.
do that if you can avoid it?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, we kept him for an extra, I don't know, 2 months or something.
Yeah,
We
well,
kept
that
him
was
for a while.
Gianna raised him for whatever, a couple months, and then
He went off out into the world.
yeah.
But I don't think I would, it does sort of bother my heart when I see them suffering. Or would I, whenever I have a sick dog or something that,
Okay, question.
I struggle with that.
And maybe this is a little too personal to talk about on the air, but it's interesting you say that because like I was extremely learning disabled, and I feel like you did a good job with that. Was it because you could communicate with me and understand like what I was going through? Because I was pretty handicapped as like a kid.
Well, why don't you describe your handicap?
Well, I can read, but I'm very dyslexic, and it's like a muscle that if I stop using, I really can get super handicapped. So I always have to like keep up with my reading, which I'm kind of like slacking these days. But yeah, so I had to be in like special classes. I've always had to have an aide read for me. Even in college, like all my exams had to be read for me because I'm not good at like comprehending what I can read.
Oh, you're reading comprehension.
Yeah,
you have
reading
no problem with comprehension.
Yeah, it's
your
like,
reading comprehension is poor. Your listening comprehension is
I have a
top.
Well, yeah, because that's the only way
Because
I
that's the
could
way you
learn.
right. You've had to develop that muscle. So
Yeah.
your listening comprehension is far and above the average person.
Yeah.
The average person's listening comprehension is whack.
Well, and I was talking to Maya, and I was like, I'm very observant of like body language and of like listening to certain like tones and like how people talk and when people talk. And I noticed over the years that a lot of people don't listen to those things or visually see certain behaviors that are going on. And I wonder if that has to do with because I was so handicapped, I had to like observe a lot.
Possibly.
And I don't know, maybe that's why I'm a good trainer, because I'm very good at seeing body language and very fine-tuned noises and stuff.
So I don't know if there's a difference between, I always feel like spiritually, the universe sometimes gives you the kid that's well matched with you and sometimes doesn't. Mm-hmm. I think you were very well matched as my kid in the universe. I have sort of a new age feeling about that. Like although biologically, of course, you're my kid, I feel like the universe put us together and I was well prepared for this for whatever reason. I never struggled to read. I don't have any learning disabilities. But, and I know you suffered a fair bit. You didn't suffer physically.
No.
So I think
it was like a mental strain.
I think it would have been harder for me if you were ill.
Or like in a wheelchair or something.
No, wheelchair wouldn't have bothered me. Ill is different. Like sickly is different. Okay. Handicap, don't bother me.
Yeah, but so then we're talking about an amputee dog. Is it the lack of, like, I could tell you when I was upset.
Maybe it's the inability to speak the same language, He can't tell me how he's feeling.
Yeah.
When the dogs are sick, they can't tell me what's wrong. When you guys were sick when you were babies, that was really hard. That was really hard. Some people love the baby stage. I don't, specifically because you can't communicate. Most people hate teenagers. I love teenagers. I think it's a great phase. You just have to treat them, not treat them like they're aliens.
Yeah.
Treat them respectfully. And I think teenagers is a great age. But for you, and it's the same thing. I felt I had a philosophy of raising kids that you have to let them struggle. I'm very old school in that way, right? And I would have raised you and Jacob the same way, regardless of whether you had a learning disability or not. But because you had this learning disability, and I knew the world was going to be cruel to you, and that the world was going to be even harder when you left my roof, when you went out as an adult, that I doubled down on that and forced you to be even more independent. Because I knew you were going to have to be extra resilient and tough to be successful in the world. Now, you don't have to be resilient or tough. You could have, you could just live here with me forever, right? And be like, not a full, well-rounded adult. But because the world was not going to do you any favors, for sure, doesn't do anybody any favors, but somebody who has a major learning disability where you almost cannot read still at 25, your reading comprehension is poor.
Yeah.
That you had to be extra tough in all the other areas. And so I made that so. I didn't cut you any slack at all.
No.
So I've always had sort of a parenting philosophy of letting you guys struggle. So I would have raised you that way regardless of whether you had a learning disability. Of course, we didn't really know you had a learning disability until you were about 3 years old. But because you had this learning disability, I knew the world was going to be extra cruel and life was going to be extra hard compared to the typical kid. So I sort of doubled down on that and sort of embarked on this philosophy to make you tougher, to shore up part of you, right? In areas that I knew you could excel at, sports. I pushed you hard in sports because I knew that was an area you could compete on an equal playing field. And that I felt would shore up your self-esteem enough to deal with the cruelty you were going to experience in the classroom. So that's what I did. I think it worked well with you. I'm not saying that would
Works
work
great with,
well in every single circumstance. And then you decided that you were gay.
I'm just making my life so hard.
And I'm like, can you, yeah. And my first thought was, okay, like you've already got it hard. Now you're going to make it harder for yourself as if it's a choice, as if either of those things are a choice. So I think that the fact that you were really toughened up in other areas probably helped you in that area as well, because I'm sure you've faced some cruelty in that regard as well. Although you're in a pretty good bubble here in New York.
Well, I think it's funny because I feel like, and this is so off topic, but I feel like the most harsh things I've gotten was from being dyslexic and like people calling me stupid. Like I have a lot of like triggers around like people calling me like dumb or slow or stupid. But like being called gay slurs, I'm like, I don't really care. Like I've never really, I mean, the only time like I know you've seen it happen is me using the bathroom and people giving me a hard time about it. When we go to like South Dakota or Wyoming or, when we go on vacation where we go to like red states or whatever. That's really the only time I've really gotten like scared around that area. But for the most part, I have more triggers around being like called like slow and stupid rather than.
Well, if you can't read, you must be stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're so ignorant.
Yeah. But my thing was, I think because you've built all this resilience in me, it's almost like a challenge when someone says something like, oh, you can't, like, in middle school, I remember teachers saying that.
Yeah, it's not just the kids that were saying stupid, it's the teachers too.
I think like that's
opposed to professionals.
Yeah, that's what hurt me the most was these teachers who would say these things, and they're adults that I'm supposed to quote unquote like respect. And they were saying like, you'll never graduate college. Like you're never going to graduate high school. Might as well graduate college. And if it wasn't for like you kind of like being like, oh yeah,
bet.
Yeah. Now it's, for me, it was such a huge accomplishment just graduating college, just to like give the finger to all those people who said I was never going to graduate high school, might as well be able to go to a college and then graduate with a degree in college.
Well, you do have excellent timing. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think, you've been, if you had been born 10 years earlier,
5 years earlier,
your dyslexia and your queerness would have been much more challenging. I think you really were born in a sweet spot.
Yep. Because I mean, kind of going back to my college and disabilities is like my freshman year, we really didn't have any technology that, not like we have now on text message where you can do like the voice to talk and then you can like talk into the phone. We didn't have that when I was in my freshman and sophomore year of college. I was still using like whatever Dragon and all that stuff. And then there was like a special program to read textbooks to me and all this stuff. And then it was junior and senior year, Mac came up with the technology where you can take a picture of whatever it is and then it will translate it into your computer and the computer will read it to you. And that was only my junior and senior year that I like learned that technology. So like if I was, went into school 5 years later or born 5 years later earlier, I wouldn't have that technology.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I think you've really benefited from that, as have millions of people for sure. So it's interesting. To me, it's all connected. My belief system in child rearing, my belief system in dog training, my belief system around building resilience, being independent, building confidence. I do think that you and your brother were both born with confidence. I think a lot of people think that confidence is built in people, that you're sort of a blank slate when you're born. I disagree. I think confidence is hereditary. I think some people are just born confident and some people are born not confident. There's a spectrum, right? And you can build it through good parenting or you can break it down, right? It's just like dog training, right?
Yeah.
You can take a dog who has the dial set. You can move the dial up or down, but you can't turn it on or off, right? So it's all sort of connects for me as a dog trainer and as a parent. I think you guys were born confident. I was born confident. And we always laugh about that. Like I am confident to the point where it's not based on reality.
No. Well, and we talk about it because no matter, so like if I truly believe, and I know you kind of feel differently about this, I truly believe if I was raised by different parents, I would have not achieved the things that I was able to achieve being raised by you and Dad. That's just me personally, because I feel like it was a lot of you guys being supportive and building my resilience. So people who were saying these negative things never pushed me down. It made me stronger to like get to that end point. With you, on the other hand, no matter who raised you, you would still be Sara. You would still be like bull in a china shop, destroying everyone and being like, hey, watch this, that's just how you were born.
I sort of agree. It's funny, but I sort of agree. I just have this incurable belief that I'm worthy and valuable.
And right.
No more so than anyone else, but also not less than anyone else.
Yes, definitely not less.
Definitely not less.
Yeah.
So you can think that, but you would be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's sort of just my genetic makeup.
Yeah.
I think probably through my dad. I think that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Not so much my mother. So I mean, I know we're sort of out in the field here, off topic. But it does connect.
Yeah, we're all in the realm. I mean, and then if we're going to bring it back to dogs, let's talk about Deacon, Vivi, and Twiggy, right? I thought us breeding Deacon and Vivi together would create this really confident, like
affectionate,
secure, not anxious, like really confident dog, right? High drive dog. And in reality, Twiggy is very insecure and has a lot of anxiety and makes terrible decisions and is not a leader, which is really interesting. And so we talk about this a lot, that I think the reason Vivian is confident in who she is because of the struggle that she went through. And maybe if she didn't go through those terrible things that she went through, she would be a completely different dog.
Also, we didn't get Vivi until she was 4.
Yeah.
Or 3.5, something like that.
She's lived a lot of life. She lives a whole
Twiggy's
different life.
only just basically at the age that we got Vivi.
Yeah.
So we don't know what Vivi was like when she was growing up, right? And like you say, how much of her environment suppressed or enhanced her personality to create who she is now. based on her sort of sketchy background. So,
I mean, and then on the other hand, Twiggy has a lot of Deacon's Edge. So
yeah, and if you, our breeding program has come a long way and has made many turns over the years, depending on who we're breeding together and what combinations we're using, what moms we're using, because that's where we see it, right? We're bringing in males, but we have the moms here as a base. So it's fascinating how different each litter is. And when we retired a female and brought a new one up, was that female related, or was she, an outcross, a new female that we purchased from somebody else with new bloodline coming in, and how much it's changed puppies. So
and
it's fascinating, really.
It's funny how we've kind of essentially moved away from Remy's bloodline and have taken more of a ties bloodline path, because now we don't have really, I mean, Evie is our last bloodlines from everyone, and she's Ty's bloodline. We don't have anyone else that we're breeding from Remy's bloodline anymore.
Yeah.
And they have made very sweet, biddable family dogs, which is what we're trying to captivate.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think we've spent this whole episode talking about resilience and struggle. We haven't talked about failure and mistakes and embracing them. So let's table that.
Yeah.
And put that on maybe next week's episode. Okay. Because I was raised in a family where failure and mistakes were really looked down upon. And that
opposite for me.
Yeah, and that affected me personally, negatively, and affected how I raised you guys for sure. A completely different opinion about failure. Like, failure is so important in creating a well-rounded person and a resilient person.
Yep.
So we can talk about that maybe next episode. Okay. I can't guarantee that we won't devolve into talking about raising.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think why I really like dogs is essentially it's a fast forward button of raising a child. And so you're able to accomplish a lot training a dog without the emotional aspect. I mean, there still is emotions, but it's not like a human level emotions. And it's very satisfying.
It is very similar to raising a kid, for sure. Even when you talk about people who parent very differently than they raise their dog, I almost feel like it's in reaction to having to parent, and parenting is so taxing and overwhelming and exhausting, and takes 18 years just to do the basics, right? I sometimes think that people get a dog and think, I don't want to have to parent another creature. So I'm going to just baby this animal and give it whatever it wants, because I want this animal to be sort of my happy place.
Yeah.
Right. I want this relationship, me and my dog, to be a place of no stress and no
struggle.
And to be honest, no relationship, because if you're not moving back and forth, if you're just giving, right? So that they're happy, spoiling essentially your dog and not asking for any kind of behavior back. Well, of course it creates a monster of a dog, which we see all the time. Yeah. But I almost feel like it's like, I don't want to have to parent another creature. Yeah. I already have my kids, and in many cases, my husband that I'm parenting. I don't want to have to parent the dog as well. And that always ends badly. Yep. And that's why we're in business. Yep. So sometimes we have to sort of pull them back. Like, no, there are negative parts to raising a puppy, raising a dog. It is a back and forth. There are good days and bad days. Yep.
I'll be the first one to tell you. Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like Twiggy's really put me through the ringer. I've learned a lot from her, but man.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about you all the time, and Jacob, but particularly you, because you it was a lot to raise you. It was a lot of work to raise you. But you were a really, really good return on investment. You were always a good return on investment. And I think that's why the teachers worked with you so well.
Yeah.
Because you were so motivated to learn and to overcome and achieve in spite of your difficulties. That teachers found that very rewarding.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times you put time and effort into a kid, and because of their home background or many other
Circumstances.
components, right? They're not able to embrace the opportunity that you're trying to give them, right? You were like, yeah, gimme. Any opportunity, I'm taking it and running with it.
You know what? I know this. We're trying to end the podcast, and this always happens. But I find interesting is as much as I had like teachers like really on my side and rooting for me and like being my number one fan, I also had like really bad teachers who were like not rooting for me because of like the drive I had. I don't know. For the most part, I don't really remember very much about it, but you tell me stories about like coaches and stuff that were like really just like putting me down. And
oh no, you had some teachers who were
like nasty.
not in your corner
and I'm
too.
like, I don't understand. Like, isn't your job supposed to be like, I don't know.
You know, it was always the old teachers.
Yeah,
the
old
teachers
school.
who'd been doing it for decades who
Like burnt
didn't
out.
like any sort of, they didn't want to learn anything new. They didn't want to embrace any new technology, or those were the teachers that gave you a hard time. And again, I wish bad teachers on people, because like everyone should have some bad teachers. They also should have amazing teachers.
Yep.
But like no one deserves all amazing teachers. They don't having all amazing teachers don't teach you every part of what you need to learn. Again, if you have teachers that are always there for you and helping you, you're not going to develop the resilience and also sort of the ability to say, hey, what do you mean? I can't do that. Fuck you. You know, that's the attitude that you needed to. So the bad teachers that you had, I think I tried to maximize that experience and frame it in a way for you and for Jacob as well.
Yeah.
Look what they're trying to tell you you are. Who are you? Remember who you are.
Yeah.
Remember that. Don't let anybody tell you who you are.
Yep.
You know, so.
And people, the good people in life are the people who respect your opinions and your advice and will give you good corrective criticism. They won't put you down for your opinions. And you can get that from a peer, or you can get that from an adult, but that doesn't mean you have to respect an adult because they're an adult.
For sure.
They have to earn your respect.
For sure. Yeah. No, I never believed in that.
No.
Just because you're an adult, you earn my respect. I don't care who you are.
Yep.
For sure. All right. We could talk about this topic, I think, forever.
I know. This is one of those, the overarching, like the struggle and stuff, I feel like is very close to the heart with us.
Yeah.
We
and
talk about it a lot.
It's connected in the dogs.
Yeah. And I think that's why we enjoy it so much, because it's something that we've always kind of bonded together with. And now it's like something that we can do together. It's not,
I mean, I don't have 9 dogs because I hate parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's not even just that. It's not only you have dogs, but you have like work children and other people that you've brought in under your wing for years. You have.
I don't hate parenting.
No, you love parenting. It's like, I think it's the skill that you find very satisfying, because you've done it many times. Even before me and Jacob, you were parenting other people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I enjoy parenting. I enjoy taking people under my wing. I enjoy protecting people, standing up for people, teaching them how to stand up for themselves. And I feel the same way about the dogs. Yeah. It's like, you know, you can do this. Stop being a little bitch. Yeah. You can do this.
Yeah.
Pull yourself together. You know, and for the most part, you know, almost every dog training case, you know, when we send them home, almost every case, I feel really good. Yeah. I feel like I leave that go home lesson feeling like, you know what? We did something good here. Yeah. We improved this dog's life, and we improved the people's lives with this dog. Like, we did something good, a little bit of good. Put a little bit of good out into the world. by helping this dog and helping these people sort of see it in a different way and fixing their relationship. You know, everyone loves to put a little something good out in the world. So it's great to have a job where you feel you can do that. And I suppose teaching,
Yep.
you know, is another. There's lots of professions that, you know, you help people. You put good in the world.
Yeah.
One dog at a time. All right. So we're going to save embracing mistakes and failure for another day. But struggle and resilience, super important.
Yep.
For dogs and people alike. All right, guys. We should wind it up. Jeez. Yak, yak, yak. All right, guys. We will see you next time on Dog for Thought. Have a good one. Bye. Dog for Thought is written and hosted by me, Sarah Brown, co-hosted by Sophie Brown, produced, edited, and original music by Jacob Brown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.